Yeah,
excited having you
I'm
around too.
excited about this next one.
I am too. I'm really excited. And those of you who are just joining us, I'm Jennifer Thompson. I'm here with Marnie Friedman. We are your co-hosts. We are the founders of the San Diego Writers Festival. And up next, we have a pretty exciting event with Laura Cathcart Robbins. This next event is brought to you by Jerry Udelson, the author of The Godfather of Green, an eco-spiritual memoir. Now, this is an interactive writing workshop experience where Laura will discuss how to take your toughest life struggles and turn them into art that can change the world. This is a topic that Laura knows well, and she's fired up to speak to you about it. I do want to say one thing about Laura. When Marnie and I first decided we want to do a writers festival, we want people to know that their story matters. We want it to be really, really accessible. We want it to be free. And people are like, you're crazy. We want everyone to come. We want it to be accessible, inclusive. And then I read this article from this amazing writer, Laura Cathcart Robbins. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Welcome. And she talked about this experience she had of being the only Black woman in a sea of white women at a writers' conference. And I remember my heart just dropped. I'm like, this is why we're founding this festival, is because we don't ever want people to feel othered. So what did Laura do? She wrote an article about her experience. She is so amazing. She also has a podcast, which came out of that experience, called The Only One in the Room. And today, she's going to offer prompts to encourage you to dig deep and become the alchemist she knows you can be. So again, this is an interactive workshop. This event is going to feature several people on screen, by the way. This is the first time we're doing this today. Everyone pre-registered, but you can participate as well. And if you want more information about turning your pain into art, just like Laura did, our very own Marnie she's provided a handout with some awesome tips. You can get this handout on our website. So it's sandiegowritersfestival.com, and go to today, scroll down to Laura's panel, and there's a little button there that says download the handout. Marnie, do you want to talk to people about the handout before I introduce Laura?
So Laura, when you came up with this idea, there were so many people sending me questions about it. You know, how do I get started? And we just wanted to give people a little bit of some people they expressed to me that they felt like they had so much to say, but they felt slightly frozen. And what are the first steps? And so the handout kind of addresses that there's so many ways that you can tell your story. If you've struggled with something, there's short stories, there's poems, spoken word, like we saw, memoir showcase, memoir showcase. You can novelize your life, you can write a movie or a play. And in the handout, the reason why I like it is because it's got a specific first step you can take, which is often the scariest thing, is like, okay, I'll just read this one article, just read this one book, or I'll just go to this one website, enter this one contest. So it's going to prompt you to take one small baby step in whatever direction you're guided to take. So Laura, we're so excited for this class, and got a great crop of people ready to take it.
Excellent. Well, I'm very, very pleased. I'm so pleased to be here. And I just want to start by thanking you, Marnie, and thanking you, Jennifer, for just your generosity, for noticing me after that Brave Magic piece, for bringing me in to sit on your advisory board, for letting me help you curate a panel at last year's San Diego Writers Festival, which was incredible. What an amazing experience. Those other writers, it was like being lifted into another space that I wouldn't have had access to if it weren't for the two of you. So I really appreciate it.
I'm sort of crushed that it didn't happen. Well, very crushed. And then now we see that we can still have some measure of this. You being here, I still can feel that feeling that you gave us last year.
Well, and what a pivot from you guys to seriously to see like, okay, this is not going to happen in person for a while, and we're all in the hallway. We don't know which door is going to open when.
Yeah.
But to kind of set up a screening room in your hallway to make it happen this way, it's so great.
We had all these conversations ready to happen, so it was just we have
Yeah,
to have them. So
exactly. So I'm going to start with the words of one of my
Laura,
writing teacher. Mhm.
Laura, let me introduce you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
People need to know how fabulous you are and all the wonderful things you've done.
Thank
I'm
you.
not partial. I adore you. I just
Okay.
adore you. I got to interview Laura on The Premise too with Scott Slaughter, her co-producer, which was amazing. You have to listen to The Only One in the Room. So Laura
And the
Cathcart
premise.
Robbins
Hmm.
and The Premise. Thank
Yes.
you. Laura Cathcart Robbins is a freelance writer and host of the very popular podcast, The Only One in the Room, living in Studio City, California with her son, Justin, and her boyfriend and producer, Scott Slaughter. She has been active for many years as a speaker and school trustee and is credited for creating the Buckley School's nationally recognized Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which I just love. Her recent articles in the Huffington Post on the subjects of race, recovery, and divorce have garnered her worldwide acclaim. She is a 2018 LA Moth Story Slam winner and was recently named the weekly U.S. contributor for the Italian news magazine, thedailyworker.it. Laura currently sits on the advisory board for our festival, which is so awesome, and the Outliers HQ Podcast Festival. Laura is also a founding member of Moving Forwards, the first national memorist collective of its kind. Find out more about her, visit her website, give her some love, theonlyonepod.com. Or you can look for her on Facebook at Laura Cathcart Robbins, on Instagram at official_Cathcart Robbins, and follow her on Twitter at Laura C. Robbins. I'm going to let you take it away.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. That was beautiful. And very humbling as well, you know.
Oh, well, you're amazing. You've
you're
worked
amazing.
so hard.
Yeah,
Look at all these beautiful people here. Look at all these people. You have a whole I'm so excited to watch all of you.
Yay.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go.
Everyone. Oh, you're going to go? Okay, thank you for that introduction. You're going to fade into the background. So as Jennifer so beautifully just said, and again, thank you to Marnie and Jennifer for this opportunity. I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins. I am a freelance cultural writer and the host and creator of the podcast, The Only One in the Room. I actually want to thank everybody because I know it wasn't just Jennifer and Marnie who helped put this event together. There is a whole team of people that are working as we speak to make sure that we don't have technical issues, et cetera, et cetera. And thank you to Marnie and Jennifer for this opportunity. I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins. A freelance culture. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. I'm going to keep going, assuming that you can hear me.
I hear you.
Okay. Thank you. So the Only One in the Room, which is my podcast and my brand, as Jennifer said, came out of an experience that I had in September 2018. I went to a writer's retreat given by Elizabeth Gilbert and Cheryl Strayed, who are besties, and it's an event that they do. I want to say it's biannually or, every few years. I'm not sure, but this one was in the Santa Cruz Mountains at a place called 1440 Multiversity. And I was so excited. It was my first solo trip anywhere as an adult. And I had been blogging for a few years at that point, but I really wanted to get serious about getting some work published. So I decided to invest in this retreat and give this as a gift to myself and to my writing career. And, as I got there were 600 people in attendance there. Actually, there weren't 600 people in attendance. It was 600 total with everyone who worked at the facility. And I'm standing in line waiting to check in, and there's 200 people probably in the check-in line. And I am getting all these very nice stares and curious looks. And I realize that I'm the only Black person standing in the line. Later in the dining hall, I'm the only Black person. Day one of the event, I'm the only Black person. And each time more people arrived, I kept thinking there'll be another Black one, but there never was. And so when I got back from this event, which was really fabulous, I loved the retreat and I got so much out of it. But I missed that affinity. I missed the ability to look across the room and be witnessed by someone who knew what it felt like, someone from my own culture, and someone else that was Black. I missed that affinity. And I've been the only Black person in many rooms before. I'm 12 years sober. I go to recovery meetings. They're very white spaces here where I live in Studio City. On a couple of the boards where I sit, I'm the only Black person there. I'm the only Black person many, many times at dinner tables. And so I came back and I wrote this story for Jessica Simpson Enriquez, who was my writing teacher at the time. And the words she wrote back to me is, I want you to write or tell a story that bears your soul, the story that broke your heart and mended it. Your words have the power to heal. The story you choose to write will be one that only you can tell. And so I wrote this brave magic story. That's what I called it. I sent it off, and it went live the next day after I sent it. It was an incredible experience for someone who had never been published, who had just self-published as a blog, to having something purchased and go live within 24 hours. And then it went viral, which was another really heady experience. And I started getting all of this feedback. And a lot of the feedback I got was, so what? So what, you were the only Black person? One was from a white German woman she was married to an African man and spent a lot of time with his family where she was the only white person in the room. And she didn't feel like there was anything wrong with that. I got another letter from a couple in New Jersey who had gone to a wedding for a Black friend, and they were the only white people in the room. And they had the same response that she did. So what? You were the only Black person. And to that, I answered that affinity is really important when you're a member of the non-dominant culture. The importance of having someone mirror back to you that same experience that you're having. People that have a separate experience from the dominant culture, whatever that might be, need a witness. You could be the only girl at an all-boys school. You could be the only non-English speaking person in a place where everyone speaks English. You need a witness. The only non-athlete in a family of athletes, you need a witness. And I needed a witness during that conference. I needed that head nod, that look of knowing that I needed to lock eyes with another Black person and know that we had heard something the same way, knowing that in our culture, this means X, whereas in the dominant culture, it might mean Y. So there's this Swedish expression that a problem shared is halved. You guys have probably heard that. I'm a very private person. And I've always been afraid, at least at first, to share my experiences on a public platform. And it's not just because I'm sharing these really tender stories, but it's also, is my experience relevant enough? Will people connect? Am I responding to something out of anger or fear? Am I trying to teach someone a lesson by writing this? Or am I trying to strike back at someone? For me, those last couple are non-starters for pieces. And I had no idea there would be such a hunger for the things that I write about beyond the tabloid level. I understand now. It goes beyond race because, like I said, people need affinity. And they need that metaphorical head nod from someone across the room. They need to know they're not the only one going through the shit they're going through or having the feelings that they're having about it. They need to know they're not alone. I write mainly about three things. I write about race, I write about relationships, and I write about recovery. 3 R's. So recovery from a very debilitating drug and alcohol addiction. I write about my divorce 12 years ago from my husband of 13 years, my boyfriend of 12 years, who I met in rehab the first day 12 years ago when we checked in, 12 years in 2 weeks, actually, it'll be. And I write about race, specifically what it's like to be the only one who looks like me and why it's so important. After my Brave Magic article was published, the next piece I wrote was an intensely personal piece, maybe my most personal piece yet, I'm not sure. It was about a woman that I considered to be a friend who married my ex-husband, and then they had a baby. And I was humiliated, I was angry, I felt guilty because I wished them harm, I wished the baby harm while she was pregnant. I was very isolated in that experience. And when I wrote about it, well, first of all, the piece was, again, it went viral, and it was the most viewed piece of the quarter. So for 3 months, it was the most viewed piece on HuffPost site. But it really had this amazing effect where the feedback I got was almost all positive, and it was from people who connected, again, that affinity. They felt like they had a witness in me. I wrote about what it's like to be a mother while battling the disease of alcoholism. Again, so much shame and guilt. And I also never dreamed that writing about that could be so cathartic, not just for me, but for other people as well. The next thing I decided to write about was a harmless crush, I'm putting that in air quotes, that I had while I was married. I think it was titled something like, "Is there such a thing as a harmless crush?" And, you know, the truth was that I was exposing a relationship I had with someone outside my marriage. I had little kids. I had been married for a long time at that point. And, you know, without it, it hadn't become a physical relationship, but otherwise it was tantamount to an affair. And, you know, I wrote about it long after the fact, but I wrote about it because I kept hearing these conversations with girlfriends where they had similar experiences and didn't know if they were alone in them. So I was like, no, girl, you are not by yourself in this. And I wrote this piece, and again, it became viral. Actually, Whoopi Goldberg did a whole section on it on The View. She wasn't very kind to me, but it still got my article a lot more clicks, so that was okay. I wrote about the fact that I was so shut down while battling postpartum that I had to drink in order to be intimate with my husband. This one was really tough, and I got a lot of negative feedback from men. I got a lot of supportive feedback from women. Women, again, who felt mirrored. They understood, they felt witnessed. They had gone through postpartum that was debilitating like mine, and they understood what I was saying. You know, not that I was condemning my husband, but I was exposing something that I had gone through that just wasn't pretty at all. Recently, I wrote 3 articles in a row for HuffPost. The first one was I forgot the title, but it was about my white boyfriend who I have now. That's the one I met in rehab 12 years ago, and how he can't possibly know what it means to be Black in America right now. Like, he can be supportive, he can be with me, he can understand some things, but he can't know what it means to be Black. And I felt like I needed to write about that again, because I kept hearing these conversations and having these conversations with other people in my position who felt the same way, who didn't know how to articulate it. My article directed toward white women a few weeks ago brought thank yous across the board from both white and Black women. It brought a little vitriol from some white women, actually, but mainly it was thank yous and support. And my last article, which I published last week or the week before, about my 11-year-old son being called the N-word, was one of my most shared articles to date. And that one, again, brought back a lot of support and a lot of thank yous from all races of people, not just Black and white. And each time I sit down to write, I'm thinking, what are you doing? You're a really private person. You don't want to do this. You don't want to open yourself up this way and expose yourself in this way. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my writing process. So as you've heard, I write really personal stories. I write personal essays almost exclusively. Occasionally, if I'm assigned something like a listicle or the top 10 people to follow on Instagram, I'll do one of those as well. But when if I'm writing something to submit to someone, it's a personal essay, which means I'm also telling someone else's story, because I don't live by myself. I mean, not that I would live by myself, but I don't live in a world by myself. I come in contact with other people, so all of my stories are about my relationships with other people. And as the great Nora Ephron said, everything is copy, which means everything that happens to you is fair game to write about. When I started talking to other writers about telling other people's story, the feedback I got immediately was, you can't tell a powerful story if you're afraid of hurting people. Your first obligation is to the truth and to tell the truth. And the brilliant Anne Lamott, quoted from the Writer's Bible, bird by bird, says, you own everything that happened to you, she says. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better. So I take all that to heart when I'm writing, and I use it as fuel when I need to push through something that I'm scared about. Just putting down on paper, I'm not even talking about submitting it to anyone. So the way I start writing, once I've decided this is a story I want to write, is I start with a meditation, or if that sounds too new agey for you, I just close my eyes and I kind of get in touch with my body. And I start to replay the experience that I'm going to write about like a movie in my mind. And so I'm reliving it as much as I can. How did the air smell? You know, what was around me? What objects did I feel? What was sharp to the touch? What was soft? What was silky? What did I see? How did things sound? Was there the hum of an air conditioner, or the rumble of a garbage truck passing by, or women's voices rising and falling? I think it's really important to have enough distance from the event. This was not the case with my Brave Magic article, because I wrote it the weekend I came back. But with the other ones, the ones that I've had to dig deeper for, I absolutely have distance from them. And the saying goes, time plus tragedy equals comedy. But for me, it also equals sellable personal essays. And when I write, I don't try to shoot the edit. You know, and that's a Hollywood expression. You shoot what's going to go on the screen, and some people can actually work like that. I don't. I write long, I write messy, I write it all out. And then like Michelangelo, when he was carving David, I begin to cut away at anything that doesn't belong to my story. My writing group is so important. I belong to 2 writing groups. Jennifer mentioned one, which is Moving Forwards, and it's a memoirist collective. But I also have a writing group of just gals that we met in a writing class years ago and stayed together. And it gives me so much perspective. I consider them to be my beta readers, and they consider me to be theirs. And a beta reader, in case you don't know, is just like not like an editor who goes through and tells you what you did wrong, but they talk about if you like the characters, or they figured out the mystery, you know, in your story, or they can give you an objective, unbiased, usually positive feedback opinion. And I do that for other people, and they do it for me, and I find it to be extremely, extremely helpful. Then I look at the outlet I'm going to pitch to once I have my piece written. And I can go for a major platform like HuffPost or the New York Times or Vogue, or a really well-respected one like The Atlantic or The New Yorker. Literary pubs like Narratively or Medium, they like personal essays on identity or defining moments. Bustle and Gay Magazine like cultural criticism, thoughtful, beautiful personal essays, and they'll work with you to uncover issues and stories that matter through the lens of authenticity, inclusivity, and conversation. I always Google the publication before I submit. I read as much as I can about it. I read their content. I read what they're looking for. One of the things that it was a trick that was taught to me, I don't know if everyone knows this, but to follow the editors on Twitter, that they give you really good information about how to pitch them on their Twitter feeds. It's kind of a gold mine of stuff. So I started doing that as well. Once I targeted the editors I wanted to pitch, or just the publications I want to pitch. You want to read their guidelines for submission. I can't stress that enough. Don't assume that all outlets have the same guidelines. Don't assume that you know the guidelines. Don't read half of them and then pitch. I mean, you can, but it might result in a rejection for a piece that might be great just because you didn't adhere to the guidelines that they like. I decide when I'm pitching if I want it to be exclusive to the publication that I'm pitching. Like the LA Times, for instance, it must be exclusive to them. You cannot pitch it anywhere else. If you're going to do what's called a multiple submission, I usually say this is a simultaneous submission, but I will notify you immediately if it should be accepted elsewhere. That's just kind of common courtesy. At first, I would just submit it. I didn't know that was something I was supposed to do. That was a courtesy to the editors. And it didn't come back to bite me, but I'm sure it would have eventually if I didn't start kind of qualifying it that way. At the same time all this is happening, I'm reading. I read memoir because that's my field. That's you know, it's a memoir to me is just like a really long, beautiful personal essay. And I can't write without filling up on other authors' work. It's like filling up my own reservoir. I also do things like I'll tie it to the current news cycle. Like, for example, when Georgia passes an extreme heartbeat law, which they just did, that's a good time to write a pitch about your experience with pregnancy or abortion. It's a really great time, obviously, now to pitch stories about racism toward Black Americans, but you don't have to be Black. A lot of my white, Asian, and brown brothers and sisters are publishing stories right now about their experience with what's going on. I suggest highly that you create a rejection folder and be okay with filling it up. I keep track of all the editors that reject me, and I come back to them with a piece that is hopefully a better fit for them. I show them that I've been paying attention to what they've been publishing. And, you know, and even if my piece doesn't hit, I'm gracious. I say things like, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate your feedback. If they gave me any, sometimes they don't. I love your publication, and I hope to be able to find a home for one of my pieces there soon. If they publish my work, I thank them, thank them, thank them. I'll always post it on social media, thanking them there as well. If you're a member of the Binders group on Facebook, I will, you know, post the article there and thank them there publicly. I don't know how the editors feel about that, but it seems to be just like just good something. I can't think of the word. I'll come back to it. So in the world of personal essays, the more personal it is, the more perspective you have on the event, the more likely you are to be published. And pain is currency here. Sometimes even now in the middle of a painful event, I want to grab a pen and jot something down because somewhere inside of me, I'm thinking this fucking sucks, but it's going to make a great story. I need to like capture these moments. You know, and then I get these pieces out in the world and the thank yous that come back are so glorious. The sharing of my articles is a fantastic feeling. Professors are using my essays in their colleges and universities. They're asking me to come in and speak to their students. And that's how I know I've really done something, like I've really connected with somebody. The facility where Brave Magic was held, that event that I went to in 2018, they contacted me to help them make their next event more inclusive. So that I feel the power of using my voice, affecting actual change. And, you know, this wasn't just about my writings about race. The same thing happened when I write about my drug and alcohol addiction. The same thing happens when I write about my marriage and my divorce. Affinity. It's affinity, and it's connection, and it's change, and it's gratitude. And I do write a lot about pain, but not for the sake of pain. When I write about things that distress me or cause me discomfort, it becomes art the moment it hits the page. And the transformation of that pain to the art of pain into art is absolute magic. One might even say brave magic. So thank you. That concludes the talking part of this. And now we're going to move into the workshop part. So I don't know if I can, how many people are here? Let's see. If you can, I'm just going to switch to gallery view. If you can, by show of hands, if you know how to raise your hand on your screen under reactions on the bottom, you can tell me if you had a chance to look at the handout and make a list, or I'm sorry, write. I had two exercises. One was to make a list of 3 moments in your life that changed one of your beliefs or caused you pain. Or the other one was make a list of 3 specific times in your life that you felt like an outsider. Did anybody get a chance to look at those or write those things down yet? And I'm seeing no hands. That is fine. Oh, I see one, Kimberly Pierce. Excellent. Or Kim Pierce, sorry. All right, so I'm just going to talk to Kim then. No, I'm just kidding. I'll talk to everybody. All right, so the assignment is, just give me a wave if you do. Do you have something to write with? Do you have a pen or a laptop or something? Yes? Okay, good. So there are two ways you can do this. You're going to make a list of 3 moments that changed your life. I'm sorry, 3 moments in your life that changed one of your beliefs or caused you pain. And the example was, I couldn't pay my rent, I was sexually harassed or assaulted, or I fell in love with a cop. Those are the 3 examples I came up with. Or exercise 2 is you can make a list of 3 specific times in your life that you felt like an outsider. I was the only person of color at a writing retreat. I was the new kid at school, meeting my boyfriend's wealthy parents. So I want you to come up with those 3, and then I want you to choose one. And then once you've chosen your one, then just please put your hand back up, share the reaction hand and put it up in your screen. And then I will move on to the next one once I see a few hands up, the next part of this rather. Could I please put the prompt in the chat? One would think I could. Let's see. Oops. Did it all come out? No. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there you go. So it's in the chat now. Don't see the reaction button. If you don't see it, then just wave when you're done. Okay. And there's a few of you done. Good. Excellent. Okay. Oh, did I not hit send yet? Did I not post it? There we go. Sorry. All right. Just give it one more minute for the people who didn't see that. And don't worry, we have time. We'll be heading back to it. You're still not seeing it? Oh, because it is to, sorry, that's why you're not seeing it. Okay. Hold on. Copying and pasting. And can you see it now? No.
Yeah, we're good. It's in the chat now. We can.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so I'm just gonna just keep talking here. So once you have written your 3 items and you've chosen one, I hope you choose the most difficult one, the one that will be hardest for you to write about because of discomfort or pain. If you choose the easy one, it's probably not going to be the best one, you know? So if you've chosen your one, I want you to tell me your story or tell me about your story in this way. So my story is about this, but it's really about this. So like my story is about falling in love with a cop, but it's really about how that relationship exposed my own biases and prejudice. Or my story is about how my former friend married my ex-husband and had a baby, but it's really about forgiveness and the unexpected freedom that it brought me. So whatever your story is, I want you to be able to tell it to me like that. My story is about this, but it's really about this. And I'm just gonna give you 1 minute of quiet. I'm gonna set a timer on my phone. And then I'll come back and I'll talk again about the next part. And then I think you guys all know that you're on screen right now, that everybody can see everybody. Just so, okay, good. Okay, our timer is done. And what I'd like for you is to write that first paragraph. But before you do, and we won't have time for me to hear everybody's, but maybe what we could do is write the first 2 sentences of your story, keeping in mind, thinking about all 5 senses. What did you see? What sounds did you hear? What did it feel like to the touch? Or where did you feel it in your body? How did the air smell? What taste do you remember? The taste of medicine in your throat? Was something salty or bitter? And let's see, if someone's ready, I would love to have you tell me, 1, what your story is about, and then what it's really about. And then if anybody wants to take a little time and write their first 2 sentences, then raise your hand, and then you can share that as well. So is anyone ready to share what, John, you want to unmute yourself?
Yes. Thank you for calling on me, and thanks for
sure.
hosting us.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're requesting that we share a little bit about what our story is?
Yeah, what's your story? My story is about blank, but it's really about blank. Okay,
I may not have done that correctly. I was the one who was requesting for the prompt to be posted because I didn't get it. But here's what I wrote, because this is actually very timely.
Good.
I'm the only man among women. And this is a common experience I've had. I would assert more than most men have had that experience. And I wrote, I feel like a police officer showing up at a house party saying, no, guys, it's cool. I'm not here to bust you.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. That's great. And that's a great only one. And yes, I'm looking around and you are indeed the only one right now. Do you feel connected to that? Do you think you could write a piece out of it?
I could. There's this, if I were to dig deeper, the sense of being authority, especially as a white male, that I assume this dominant role, and there's guilt and shame about that. Like, what'd I do to earn this? Nothing. I was born like everybody else.
Yeah.
So there's that sense of like undeservingness. And then there's the wariness that I'm at times greeted by. I would say maybe 10% of the time, it feels like a negative response that I'm getting. Like, I wish he was not here right now is kind of what I pick up on. And that feels unfair.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I get the whole sacred circle. And like, maybe I shouldn't be here at all. Yet at the same time, I want to be here. Like, now I'm getting a lot from this. And this is exactly perfectly aligned for me in my path to be here.
Well, I think you just actually did the assignment, because your story would be about what it's like to be the only man on this writer's panel. But it's really about the kind of conundrum that you face being the only man in any situation where there's either guilt or shame for being male in a world of females, or for being viewed incorrectly, for having someone prejudge you as a man, for people bring prejudice against you and not judging you by your character or what you can bring to the situation. Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. I think you should write it.
Okay.
Just write it all out.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, John. I saw another hand up. Chloe.
Hi, thanks so much for being here and doing this with us.
Oh, sure. It's my pleasure.
Okay, my story is about being kicked out of a religion, the only world I knew, but it's really about growing up and growing out of these really strict, confined rules and living my life and learning how to be who I am.
Mm.
So I wrote 2 long sentences because it's very much in my head and not so much in my senses. So I kind of do both. In February 2009, I was disfellowshipped from my religion, the Christadelphians. It is a small religion where you only associate with each other, and there are strict rules for behavior. I felt cold, rejected, all alone in the world, like being born and kicked from the womb. I just wanted to cry and wail, and I felt incapable of knowing how to soothe myself.
Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. Have you written about that before?
I'm writing about it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell. Like, I can feel it. Yeah. Did you just get hot?
I did.
I can totally feel that.
Yeah.
I'm getting hot with you. No, I love it. I love it. I hope you keep writing about it. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And it's a great example of what I'm talking about, just like John's. Just that it's not just fish out of water, but it's the crying out for that affinity. So thank you. Thank you, Chloe. And then, was it Libby? Did you have your hand up? Can't hear you, Libby. Are you muted? There you go.
Yeah, someone did it for me.
Okay.
Probably Marnie. So mine is about feeling discriminated against, which I don't even like using that word because I know it's not relative anymore, but it's how I felt in the past, feeling discriminated against for my obesity.
Mm.
So my story is, as I walk into a Best Buy to buy a computer, I feel the air, but I'm hot. I feel afraid to ask anybody for help, and nobody reaches out to me. Nobody, I stand there and look around, and none of the service people come to help me. And I feel like it's about my obesity, but really it's about my own insecurities and my own passiveness, my inability to speak up for my rights.
Mm.
So that's
Wow.
the story. And I'm better. That was me 5 or 10 years ago, and I'm better now, but it still really clings to me,
Oh, that needs to be written, Libby. Please write that. Because that's, I know people who have that experience, and it is discrimination.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
I mean, guys like skinny girls, and they'll rush over to help a hot chick, but they won't rush over to help a fat old lady.
Yeah. No, I think that you would get a lot of people who would appreciate you writing that because they have that same experience. I think to publish that on a major platform would be a tremendous service.
And it would probably give me a big boost too.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? I forgot to ask that. We only just have a few more minutes, so I just wanted to see if there was any questions about anything that I said. Cynthia James Price, thank you. Thank you for that. If there's anybody that has any questions, if not, we can go to another story. You guys are okay? Does someone else have a story? Kim?
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
My story is about being diagnosed with lupus, but what it's really about is my first step in getting to know who I really am and my true self.
Yeah.
So I came into lupus, I was diagnosed at a young age, so I was in a career as a physical therapy. I was an athlete. I had all these identities about being strong and in control, and having an illness that stripped that all away brought me to the core of who I was and made me realize that no matter what's going on externally, I'm not broken and I can never be broken. And I believe that's true for everybody.
Wow. And an autoimmune, anything right now is so topical because of COVID and because of, just to have an illness, or how do you refer to it? Lupus? Do you refer to it as a disease or an illness or
Either. I mean,
either? But having something that puts you at a disadvantage, and then writing about how it actually gave you an advantage by allowing you to get yourself to know yourself better.
mhm.
It just, it eviscerates that perception, right, of us seeing you as a victim then, because you become empowered. And I think this particular time during this pandemic, what a way to be able to look at somebody who has an autoimmune disorder and see them as empowered and, hopefully, obviously taking care of yourself. I think it'd be great and really timely. I think you could find a home for that. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to ask, I see Isadora. Are you waving?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Isadora.
For me to share a bit my story a little bit.
Please.
I'm really appreciating other people's stories because it's very inspiring to some of my own experiences. But my thing is, it's about having labels as being disabled and someone who's had chronic pain since I was a little girl. And then learning when I was in the university that I got a new identity that I didn't realize. And how that came about was that I joined a mindfulness class for people with chronic pain. And I was coming in my powered wheelchair, and I was the youngest Black person in a wheelchair, and everyone else was sitting on pillows on the floor. No one had a device that you can see. And of course, I know many disabilities are invisible, but I thought I had found my tribe, and now I felt completely alienated.
Mm.
And it was such a wake up to realize that being physically disabled in a chair doesn't necessarily mean that chronic pain was the cause. But here and now I had this other level that I was not used to. I had to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's like an othering within an othering, huh?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really powerful too. And, if you can find a way to write that, obviously with emotion, but with perspective, I think it could be really effective too. I'm worried that we're out of time and they're going to cut us off. Jennifer, are you there? Are we done? Am I wrong? I guess they left.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm so sorry. I was on mute. No, you have another 15 minutes. This is so powerful.
Good. I'm so
Keep
glad.
going.
I was getting worried.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was riveted. I just love all of you. So I'm gonna give it back to you. Okay.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, Isadora, that that is a really interesting thing, I think, to be a part of a group and still be othered within that group is something that not a lot of people have experience with. But I think if you were able to write it well, or not well, but if you were able to articulate it on paper, people would see that they have more experience with it than they think. You know what I mean?
Marginalized.
Yeah.
Within a marginalization.
Yes, exactly. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Let's see. Yeah, Forrest. I can't hear you, Forrest.
Forrest, it seems like your mic's not connected. You're unmuted, but I just don't think you have audio streaming, love.
That's too bad. Let's see if we can get that together for us. Let us know, and I'll come back to you. Okay. I'm looking up. Let's see. Yeah, Cynthia. Yeah? Can you unmute yourself?
That's why I go by Vin.
How do you pronounce it?
Vincentia.
Vincentia. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not really ready to talk about, like too distressing the thing that hit me to write about.
Mm-hmm.
So I just being honest, what my story's about, but just to write it down, something that changed my belief. The story's about what it's right about, what is it really about? So I just feel too exposed to say it, but
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that I'm getting a lot out of what you're doing. And I just drew this picture of you while you were.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's awesome.
I just like, your
Amazing.
energy and your spirit and all the things you're sharing. And I don't know, I'm in my drawing room anyway. So I just did that little sketch. So I just wanted to thank you. And I think this is really, these exercises are really useful. I'll get into it more.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. That's amazing that you sketched that of me as I'm talking and gives a new meaning to the word drawing room. Yeah.
You said you said you turn it into art. So
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think for a couple of the subjects that I've written about, I wouldn't have been able to create it and put it out there in a class like this right away. For a couple of them, it would be too tender and too personal. The story that I wrote about my ex-husband marrying my friend and them having a baby, that took me a lot of work to get to, and then to be honest about it. And then I was, quite frankly, I was embarrassed. And then underneath that, there was shame. And underneath that, there was guilt, and there was jealousy. And I was embarrassed of being jealous, and all these human things that I don't like to expose to the world were going to be exposed if I wrote this piece, and certainly if I talked about it to anybody. So I definitely encourage you to, try to get it out, to get it to someone that you trust once you've written it, and get a different perspective on it, so you can see if it reads the way it's that you're intending it to read. That if it's the idea for me is always to show a shift or a change. Not that I tie everything up in a bow, because I don't. And if you read any of my work, you'll see that some of it ends with questions. But there's always a shift in my pieces. Like, I started here and then I came here, even if here isn't where I'd like to be ultimately. It's still different than where I started. And, that same piece that I'm talking about, I got to the end of it and had an experience with my ex and his wife, and realized that I really did want them to have this baby, who will be 6 next month. And she's delightful and adorable and calls me Auntie Lor. So you can't make that up, but it's only because I went through that work and did the work that it took to forgive, not just them, but myself as well, for having the feelings that I had. Let's see. Is it Chili? Is that,
yes. Hi.
Hi. Did you want to share something?
Oh gosh, I'm doing the 5-minute or 3-minute read, so I'm kind of preoccupied. But the thing that came to mind, and I think it's kind of a coming of age or just growing up kind of thing, is that I had an eye condition, and I was borrowing my dad's car, and the doctors didn't tell me not to drive, but I got into an accident. And then I found out that my dad didn't have insurance. And I was so mad. At first, I was so mad at myself. And then I was so mad at him for not being the responsible parent. And I think it just shifted my relationship with him. And it made me think a lot about how we put our parents on a pedestal, and, how we can come to peace with them, as just accepting them as flawed human beings and just love them for that.
That is, I feel like that's kind of a universal thing, not the eye condition and the accident, but there's usually an inciting event that reveals our parents to us as humans. And I didn't like it when it first happened to me. I did not want to see them as human. I definitely, especially now that I have grown children, I can appreciate it much better and appreciate them in a different way. But, you know, I feel like I've heard that story of people saying, and now I saw my dad as this, or I see my mom as, you know, your parents get divorced when you're an adult and your parents start dating other people and you can't help but see them as human.
Yeah.
It's like, ew, don't date other people. But then it's like, of course, they are human beings with needs. So I think that would be a really interesting piece. And, you know, it wouldn't have to be a particularly painful one to write. It's just kind of uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be great. And it could be really interesting, like HuffPo parents could hear something, publish something like that. Washington Post has that great parenting section that goes both ways for parents of young children, but also dealing with one's parents. So it could be something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have more painful stuff that I don't know if I'm quite ready. I still have to process, and I'm planning on writing about it, but you know, like date rape kind of thing, you know, losing your person.
And that's real. That's also something that when and if you are able to write about it, that can, you know, be really healing for a lot of people if you put that out there.
Yeah. No, I plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote about my date rape and put it on my blog. If you go to my blog, you'll see it's a long story on there. And I had to like warn my parents before I published it because they didn't know. I hadn't told anyone.
Yeah.
And now I was telling the world, you know, but it was really, gosh, it was so freeing. I didn't even know that I was keeping it inside until I let it out on that level. So
I always appreciate Amy Schumer's comment, like every woman's been a little bit like raped or something.
Yeah. Oh God, I love her. She's so great. Let's see, who haven't we heard from? Yes, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but you know who I'm talking about.
Hi, Laura. This is Marika.
Marika.
Yeah, it's got an L in front of it. I should have changed it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. You are an amazing presenter, and I'm really drawn in. And I'm also oddly kind of nervous. I have written, and I've written on a subject that was very painful to me. I wrote a whole book. What's interesting about this, though, is I'm in the process of trying to condense exactly what you're saying into a 5-page personal essay. And revisiting it. So I'll just say it's basically my story is about how it starts with how my husband had an affair with my best friend. Oh. But what it's really about is what it means for me to get truly naked with myself. And so what it was really about was the opportunity to be more vulnerable, not less.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting because the event happened 25 years ago. And I wrote about it 6 or 7 years ago. But now going back and trying to condense this into this 5-page essay that I'm interested in doing, I'm still pulling back after all of this. It's funny. So that's what I'm working with.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously relate, and I can completely understand still pulling back. Like the honesty with self was just as hard for me, to be honest with everybody else, to be completely honest with myself about how I felt about this. And, you know, in Jessica's words, the words that I read at the very top, and I think they might even be on the outline, I'm not sure. But I'm going to write a story that broke my heart and mended it again. It's going to be a story that only I can tell. And that's a story that's going to find its audience.
Yeah.
That kept me going with that story. And I kept going, okay, go a little deeper. And I would write it and go, all right, you can go a little deeper. And then when I went deep enough, it was like I struck oil, and I could feel it. I could feel that heat that like Chloe had with that flash when she was sharing, that heat in my body, and I knew that I was there. And even though it was super uncomfortable, when I got away from it after I'd written it, I was like, oh, this is magic right here. This is, this is something that is of me, but it's also not of me. By giving it to the world there, it belongs in another dimension, or I don't know how to explain it, and it's not until I get the feedback that I know. And like that piece, like I said, it was the most viewed article on HuffPost for 3 months in a row.
Amazing.
Like people all over the world, I was getting responses in different languages that I couldn't read. But people connected. So people will connect to your story for sure. And is my time over
well,
now?
it was fun. I had.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I was just. I did when I touched in with the scene itself. All of a sudden, I was again curled on a ball on this set of stairs, and it was visceral. It was there for this moment. Yes. It was great.
Those are the best pieces so when you can feel it. Yes. Marnie, am I done? Jennifer, am I done?
Hello. Oh my gosh. Laura, that was really beautiful. And everyone, thank you for being so brave and telling your stories. And I think it's so good for people to watch you be brave and talk about your pain. I mean, it's incredible that like turning pain into art, that it just seems like really, but yes, that's how it works. Things that touch us viscerally, that we're so passionate about. And I know this is Marnie's big deal, and she just came on too. Marnie, do you want to say a couple words? Because I just thought that was fabulous. And before you do though, Laura, thank you for coming. I appreciate you. Thank you for answering my direct message on Facebook when I first reached out. Can you believe it? We talked about this.
Yeah. Can't remember.
I'm like, I have to know this woman. And then I sent a DM. And
that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course I remember that.
And then you got back to me and I was like, whoa, the world is so big and yet so small. And
it was my pleasure. And I got to mirror what Jennifer just said. Thank you all for your bravery, for your courage. These are not easy things to expose to a group of strangers, even on Zoom. And even if they are easy, it's still kind of uncomfortable. I mean, they're easier to talk about, just to do this in this kind of space, in this forum. If you had been unwilling to share anything, I would have been up here, just kind of waiting. And so to make it as interactive as it was, it felt really good. I love your stories. I hope to read them or see them on a stage, or, see them in a screenplay or on a screen, please.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I know a lot of you on the screen, and I'm so proud of you guys for speaking up and sharing the stuff that scares you the most. And I'm so excited for this next year when a lot of you are going to be launching your stories. So Laura, we'll invite you to whatever venue we will be at to see many of their stories. And thank you for helping facilitate this.
Great.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you
We should do more of this, Laura. Marnie and I have lots of plans, and you're in them.
I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
I know. I love it.
I'm not going anywhere. No, I'm just kidding.
Good. That's what we want to hear, because we're not either, right? We're in it.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks for participating.
Thank you.